my loyal blade and champion of the festival. Both your deeds will ever be praised in song. Now, the vow will be honored, and my lord brother's soul will return, so that he may be my consort.
Welcome back to My Pain and Suffering, this time around on the Elden Ring DLC Shadow of the Erdtrees, where Radahn is back and he has stolen all of my frames and killed my OBS. And he's not done yet. This unit of a beast is here to make Malenia look like child's play. This boss is so hard, I believe he's the hardest boss they have ever made. Is it bullshit? Maybe. But is it a lot of fun? Yes. He took so long I swapped builds twice to maximize my damage potential. And with this newly found deflection tier, this might just work. But don't worry, I had peak motivation this time around, and I got through it. So enjoy my blood, sweat, and tears, but we'll say blood. But do stick around to the end, as I'll give my closing thoughts on the Elden Ring DLC.
Lord brother, at long last you are returned. Tarnished one, aspiring lord of the old order, if you have known sin, if you grieve for this world, then yield the path forward to us. To I, Nicola, and my promised consort, Radahn. we honor our part of the vow, promise me you'll be my consort. I'll make the world a gentler place.
Man, when they saw a lord and a god, they were not kidding, were they? Oh? What's this? Shaman Village. Now, what a beautiful place this is. So, the DLC, how was it? I'd honestly say it was a very good experience. It does nonetheless feel more like more of the base game, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if you're expecting something as great as the Ring City was to Dark Souls 3, I really don't see that here. It felt more of an expansion, almost like we were exploring another zone of Elden Ring rather than a whole new experience. It's funny because I remember being told that this was going to be like the size of like Limgrave, and it is honestly like double or triple that. But for $40, would I recommend this DLC? Yes, if you enjoyed the base Elden Ring. If you're expecting it to be similar to how Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3's DLC was, even Dark Souls 1 or 2 really was for their games, I don't know. It does feel like it's missing something, though I could not tell you what that is. Maybe because I'm at the end of the road. That this is the final bit of Souls content, at least at least for me, because I started this with Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, went to Elden Ring, went to Sekiro, went to Demon Souls, Lies of P, then Bloodborne, and then went back for the Elden Ring DLC. And maybe it's because, at least for me, this feels This feels like a finale for me in a way. And don't get me wrong, it definitely didn't disappoint in any way. The bosses were extremely fun. Challenging, yes, and for the most part, fair. Really, the only boss I don't like is Commander Gaius. I think a lot of his moves did not match with his hitboxes. It really felt like you were taking damage where you really should. But a lot of the bosses were really fun. At least for me, because I enjoy the difficulty of these Souls games. And I think Elden Ring's difficulty is brutal. It is a step up. But I do think it is, for the most part, fair. So I don't really mind, certain things that some of the bosses do, as long as they're more curative and, almost innovating on an idea that they have rather than just feeling unfair much. I never really felt that with any of these bosses. Like, going up the list real quick that I have here, the Mother of Fingers and the Pure Progression Knight are really the only bosses I don't care for alongside Gaius, but even something like the Sunflower boss was honestly really fun. It was an interesting idea, nonetheless. He was still really easy and didn't take me probably 3-ish tries to beat. He's not hard. The Saint of the Bud with a really cool and different design, I guess you could say. It's very similar to how Quelaag from the Dark Souls 1 had, like, you know, the spider half and the human half, but this one's, the human half is very different, and the spider half is now a centipede, butterfly, as well as a scorpion. A very interesting design. I always love this. I always love these designs. The Twin Moon Knight is a knight that got a lot of people stuck for a while, and frankly me as well. I got stuck for about an hour-ish. It's not too difficult. I really like the spectacle with it. The only move I don't really like is the moons it pulls out. The answer is just the jump. I didn't learn that until my winning attempt, unfortunately. The dancing lion felt like a great introduction for what you were going to see later on. He was the first boss I found. I know a lot of people found the Twin Moon Knight first before they found the dancing lion. Much understandable if you just follow the road. The map leads you down. But I found the dancing lion first, and I found him to be a great introduction boss, as he's a lot harder than a lot of the base game bosses. He's not too hard per se, but if you've played the base game for a while, he's a lot tougher than some of the other bosses within the base game. The Lord of Friendly Flame being a kind of breath of fresh air, going through the abyssal woods, having some interesting concepts, some well done, some kind of mediocre, honestly, but it was really nice to have this whole area end off with a really great final boss to it. The Lord of Friendly Flame is not particularly too hard, but is a fun boss. He is downright the best soundtrack in the entire DLC. Mesmer, the poster boy of the Shadow of the Erdtree, definitely doesn't disappoint. I'm glad he's not the final boss, because they definitely had a more creative idea with that, and I really do like it. With Mesmer, they had a really good story for him, and I do like a lot of the lore with him. I just feel like there could have been a little more, I guess you could say, but he serves his purpose really well, and he's a very enjoyable fight. The only part I don't like with his fight is Phase 2, the giant snakes in Phase 2 tend to be a little janky from time to time, but aside from that, he is a very, very incredible fight. One of the best in Elden Ring, honestly. And he downright has probably the best grab out of the entire Souls game. Sister Frida is also probably a really good one from Dark Souls 3's first DLC, but I think his is on par with with that one. Bale is a very fun dragon fight. I unfortunately did not meet the NPC for the fight, which is downright a fucking Chad in comparison to most Souls NPCs that join and fight. He is epic, but Bale himself as a dragon is a very, very fun one to fight. He encourages a lot of, his head takes more damage similar to how Medeir's does, but it's not just the head. He also encourages his back leg and his arm because he's very damaged, so those parts also take more damage, and a lot of his moveset also accounts for this, as there's certain moves that he'll glide kind of over you, and you'll be able to attack his leg, or certain other ones that he'll slam down, but you can't really go for his head, but you can go for his arm instead of just having one. It encourages multiple options. I found his way of a dragon fight to be very entertaining, and his presentation for second phase is really cool. His little lightning wings and a lot of his breath attacks were probably the coolest in the series. It's hard to say if I like him more to Medeir, but a part of me wants to say I like him more to Medeir, but Medeir just probably has the better presentation. And then finally, promised consort Radahn. I'm okay with Radahn being back, especially since there's this weird lore thing with Moog and stuff when it comes to him. It's not just a reskin of a fight either. It's very different than the base game Radahn, and I found his moveset, especially in Phase 1, to be very fun to learn. The deflections I was using, he's the only boss I really deflected because I found it so late into the game. but I found a lot of his moveset in Phase 1 to be very, very fun to learn. A lot of his attack patterns kind of going in a 1-2, 1-2, 1-2-3 kind of motion was very... It was very almost rhythm-based, kind of. And it is a lot of fun to do his Phase 1. I honestly wish Phase 2 was just more of an expansion on that. The second phase was a little more kind of just frustrating, as it felt like they were just trying to be a lot more flashy with it. And some attacks felt very... I don't want to say the word unfair, because it is pretty easy to dodge, but his little tactical nuke inbound, he has like 2 different types he can do. Both of which are very hard to avoid unless you immediately account for them happening when they happen, which then they're fine. But it is slightly hard to learn the patterns of attacks when a lot of his attacks are extremely punishing. But for it, he is the hardest boss in the entire Soul series, in my opinion. He's a lot harder than Gale or Manus or Fume Knight or really even Melania, which is why I wish the second phase was more difficult because of it being a really hard to learn moveset or wacky attacks that feel very not unfair but unnatural in a way. It's why I really like his first phase, because his attacks feel, one, like Radahn in his prime, and I wish we had more of that, rather than just God said no today. It was still a really fun boss, even after all of that, but I probably wouldn't put it too high up on like a list, per se. It is definitely a really good way to end off the game, especially with kind of how Radahn and Elden Beast felt. Elden Beast felt very much like a disappointment, and Radahn, I wish I just had more of him instead of Elden Beast. Which I'm glad they now allow Torrent to be in the fight, because it definitely helps not make that boss feel as tedious as he is. Moving away from bosses, though, a lot of the weapons were very fun to use, but a lot of them are kind of underwhelming. The great katanas are some of my favorite weapons. They are. But the great katanas felt very middle of the road in 2 ways it really doesn't need to be. Katanas are really used for, at least in Souls games, used for their speed, and a lot of the time their bleed. And here, they really don't have the speed for it, and they're also not strong enough to be considered like a strength weapon in a way. I don't use fist weapons, so I never really cared for the fist weapons. The light greatswords are pretty fun to use. I just wish they had more variety within them, but I mean, that's kind of what you get out of a DLC that adds a literal class of weapons known as throwing daggers, and there's only one item in that class. I really enjoy throwing weapons as a concept for the Souls games, but unfortunately the throwing weapons we have aren't really that good. Some of them just don't go as far as you really think they should, and honestly a lot of them don't do enough damage to really justify using them. The only one that's really good is Mesmer's signature weapon, mainly because that one has some really good range, and when fully charged it explodes in fire, doing continuous damage on top of the damage it already most likely has done because of the impact. But I do think overall this DLC is a very enjoyable expansion on Elden Ring. If you've really enjoyed the base game, or at least even small bits of the base game, you will enjoy this one. It has a lot of highlights. Bale comes to mind as downright one of the best dragon bosses. I found Placidus X and Fortis X to be very underwhelming in comparison, and Bale is a huge step up. He seems it at first, but then changes it to be like an oh my god kind of dragon fight, and a lot of bosses in the DLC kind of feel the same way. I talk about bosses a lot because they are, at least for me, one of my favorite parts about these games. They tend to be very fun and engaging challenges to see what you've learned from the game so far, if you're picking up mechanics, or really even just to experiment with you on fun ideas that they may or may not have. Now, I've probably talked for way too long. It is 1 in the morning for me right now, and I have to get up pretty early. Honestly say it is worth getting the DLC. It is a fun expansion, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy all the Souls games. I trash on Dark Souls 2 a lot, but frankly, Dark Souls 2 is still a fun game for me, and all of these games are near and dear to me, honestly. And you know who you are. Thank you, Dominic, for showing me these games. I really gotta start taking advice from you when it comes to video games, don't I? I don't know, maybe I will do Metal Gear next. This is the last game he's recommended me, but frankly, I'll probably end up finishing stuff like Rain World first. I was gonna upload a video on Rain World Hunter, the campaign based on the Hunter, but frankly, how many bits of it just don't really seem that entertaining. What I might do is kind of do like a almost like pyrocynical style video on Rain World. Now that I feel more motivated to have talking into my video, which frankly, editing this at 1 in the morning and hearing my voice for like 3 hours makes me want to kind of die on the inside. I don't know what I'll do next, but we'll see. We'll see. I'll put it up here. I know I do have a video on a modded Rain World that I did actually decided to use my mic with, so I'll probably edit that one and throw it up there. But either way, I'm almost at the 25-minute mark, so I think I'm done here. I hope you all have a good rest of your night. I'm about to go sleep like a fucking teddy bear. Buy the DLC, it is 100% fucking worth it.